Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Blog Talk Radio.
You're about to hear a revolution in talk radio, Liberty Talk Radio, where the critical thinking will defrag your mind of propaganda-ridden viruses induced by mass media news programming. No BS here, just the facts.
And now we present to you America's quintessential iconoclastic anomaly. Wow. In talk radio, your host, Joe Cristiano.
Welcome, everyone, to Liberty Talk Radio, America's libertarian voice, broadcasting from our studio in Tulsa, Oklahoma, to around the world. I'm your host, Joe Cristiano, and this is your antidote to popular talk radio. Today, we were to have Dr. Ron Paul on our show. Unfortunately, he contracted a severe case of laryngitis, I guess, right? Yeah, laryngitis, and was unable to speak. He was willing to go on the program, but boy, it didn't sound very good. I think it would have been done more harm to him by having him on the program. So we have rescheduled him for sometime next week. Please stay tuned, and we'll send you a notification as to when he'll be on again. This has never happened before to us, and neither has this ever happened before to him, having laryngitis right before a program. So we're the recipients of that. We feel sorry for him. We hope he gets well very, very soon. But this will give us a little bit of an opportunity to talk about some of the issues that are facing Americans today. And I want to talk a little bit about the election itself for the presidency of the United States. I'm very, very troubled with the campaign as it is going on now. And by the way, if you have any questions or any comments you want to make, please call in 646-652-4620. That's 646-652-4620. Press the 1 button so we know that you want to break in. But when you listen to the candidates, now, I would say when you listen to all the candidates, but you don't, because the mainstream media excludes all the candidates. And when you think about that, you have Gary Johnson, who is a candidate eligible for people to vote for in all 50 states, and he is rarely ever mentioned. He's never on television, and he's never given something like equal time or given an opportunity to respond to what the other candidates are saying. Now, they'll do that for Hillary Clinton, and they'll do it to Donald Trump. So what does that tell you? Well, that tells you the system is rigged. I mean, if you want to hear about someone talk about the rigged system, listen to my good friend, my compadre, Gerald Celente. You know, he talks about the rigged system, and he's absolutely correct. Because if we had, in fact, a fair system, if we were truly a free country, each candidate would be given equal time. Now, I've mentioned this before, and I'm sure many of you are probably getting tired of hearing of it, but I like to listen to the elections for the House of Commons, because they get all the candidates, whether or not, provided they qualify as a candidate under their rules, and I'm not certain what their rules are, but they're a lot less stringent than ours, but they can be an obscure party, but they're eligible and they're on the ticket. They're on television with the mainstream candidates, equal time and equal space. In fact, when they had the main debate on English television, British television, Cameron, who was the reigning prime minister, was on the stage with the lesser candidates, if you will, and his place on the stage was way at the end. He was at the end where they put Ron Paul, and where they put after that Rand Paul, and all the candidates that they really don't want to give much publicity to. So we do live in a very rigged system, and because of that, we as Americans, as we consider ourselves free people, should object to that. And the way we object to that is don't complain to your neighbor, your best friend at a bar or something like that, or while watching a football game. What you should do is not vote for the mainstream candidates. You shouldn't even think of voting for a Hillary Clinton or a Donald Trump. you should consider voting for, Jill Stein, although I don't agree with hardly anything she says, or Gary Johnson, I agree with most of what he says. Now, let me take an issue that bothers me, a general issue, and that is the candidates talk about the symptoms, they never talk about the cause. For example, when they talk about extreme Islamic terrorism, they say we have to do something about that. But they never talk about why is there extreme Islamic terrorism. Why are people 7,000 to 9,000 miles away concerned about coming over here and doing harm to us? Why? It doesn't make any sense. They're not doing that in Canada, they're not doing it in Brazil, they're not going to Argentina or Chile, but they want to come here. Now, the people in the Middle East, for the most part, except for the hierarchy, are relatively poor people. They think people are sitting around, having their families, wondering whether or not they're going to have enough food for their families that day. We're not going to get that glass of clean water that day. You think the first thing in their mind is getting on a plane and traveling 7, 8, 9,000 miles to do harm in the United States? Well, they have to have a reason for doing so. And we always give them a reason to doing so because they have hatred in their hearts for the United States because of what the United States does. It's very simple. When I walk down the street, no one punches me in the nose. But if I walk down the street and I decide, hey, I don't like that guy, I'm going to punch him. I punch him in the nose, most likely he's going to punch me back. But we don't want to talk about why we have the conditions we have today. We just want to talk about what we're going to do. In other words, spend more money, send more troops, kill more people, and make it seem as if we have things under control when we're totally out of control, right? But actually, I don't want to talk about that. What I want to talk about is a subject I don't understand. I don't understand at all, and that's immigration, illegal immigration. I don't understand the subject. I know what you're thinking. You're saying, well, Joe, it's very simple. A person from another country is coming over here illegally. What is it that you don't understand? Well, I don't understand what makes a person illegal. Let's take Mexico in the United States. Right? You have a person in Mexico who's a citizen of Mexico. Now, when they're in Mexico, they have to abide by the rules and regulations of Mexico. For example, if I believe in Mexico, in most towns, there's no sales tax, right? So when they buy something for 20 pesos, they pay 20 pesos, right? Now, the reason why I know that, I was in Mexico recently, and I went to a coffee shop, and they charged me $1 for a cup of coffee, or whatever it was, or so many pesos, and I was waiting for it to be that amount plus sales tax, and they just took the dollar or whatever it was. And I was sort of stunned for a while. I said, well, what about the sales tax? And I realized they have no sales tax. Anyway, I was pleased. I said, this is great, no sales tax. Anyway, now, if that person in Mexico comes to the United States, right, and they buy a cup of coffee, they buy the cup of coffee, and they pay the sales tax. In other words, it's not the person that's illegal, is that the person has to abide by a different set of circumstances or rules. So why do I care whether or not they were born in Mexico or they were born in the United States? They're buying a cup of coffee and they're paying the sales tax. What is so illegal about that? Now let's take a hypothetical situation. Let's assume for a second, and this case actually exists, by the way. It's hypothetical, but it exists. There are houses right on the Mexican border. Within a few steps of the Mexican border that are in the United States. And on the reverse side, there's houses right on the Mexican border that are in Mexico. Now, there's no line there. There's no division. There's nothing. There's just land and there's a street. In fact, I want to divert the attention a little bit to when I was 1960, when I was in France. And I was walking down this street, and there was a concrete post. And it was a residential area. I don't recall what I was doing there. I just can't recall. But I was touring the place by myself. And on one side, there was the letter F, and on the other side, on the opposite side, there was engraved in the concrete, an S. And I was looking at it, there were just very few people around. There was mostly apartment buildings, 3-story apartment buildings, typical European street. And I'm looking back and forth, and, so I stopped someone. I said, "Excuse me, do you speak English?" And the guy did speak English very well. He said, "Yes, I do." I said, "What is the S for, and what's the F for?" He said, "What does it stand for?" He says, "Oh, that means when you're here, you're in Switzerland. When you're on this side, you're in France." I said, "Oh, okay, that made sense." So, okay. So I walked 3 steps, and I was in Switzerland. I walked 3 steps back, I was in France. I didn't feel any different. There was no change. People were going back and forth. And ever since then, I said, well, why do we have, I can understand we have borders because you have jurisdiction. If you want to live in this area, there are certain rules and regulations that you have to abide by. We have a sales tax. We don't have a sales tax. We do things a certain way. We speak a certain language. If you want to do business here, you should learn to speak that language and whatever. But it doesn't make people illegal. I mean, when I went to the French side, I wasn't legal, and then when I went to the Switzerland side, illegal. I mean, I didn't change at all. I just had to abide by the rules and regulations of that country. Now, believe it or not, back in the 1930s and before, that's exactly the way people migrated to and from the United States. And people say, but they take our jobs away. Well, let me get this straight. I go to an American school, and we're supposed to have such a great school system here in the United States, which it really sucks. You know that, and I know that. Our public school system is probably one of the worst in the world. But let's say it's a great system, We all graduate scholars, everyone, especially in the inner city where they can't even speak English, But so you go to American school, right? And you even most likely go to a community college, a trade school, or a 4-year college and whatever. Now, after all that education, is my competition in the workplace people coming from Mexico with hardly little or no education, that don't speak the English, don't understand, don't have not assimilated in society, and are accustomed to basically hard labor. Is that my competition? No, I want to be an engineer. I want to be an advertising executive. I don't want to pick lettuce. I mean, I don't want to do hard labor. I mean, I couldn't do it. I couldn't compete. And so when we say, well, they're competing for our jobs, well, what kind of jobs are you talking about? So a person comes here, and provided a person walks over that imaginary line and comes here, that doesn't make the person illegal. It just says that now you have to comply with the rules of the United States. Now, the argument is that, well, they didn't comply with the rules because the rules said that you have to go through the border. Well, I have a problem with that also. They say, well, you have to go through the border because if you don't, we have all sorts of murderers and people who want to inflict harm on the United States. Well, if we're not inflicting harm on anyone else, why would someone want to come to the United States and inflict harm? Do people say, hey, I don't have any money, I need a job, my family is starving, I think I want to go to the United States and kill somebody. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Now, they may have, if they have a reason to, maybe if we killed their family, and they want to seek revenge, I can understand that. But that's a separate issue. I'm just talking about immigration. Now, here's the argument. Right? People say, well, what if a person comes from Mexico and the guy's a murderer? Or the gal's a murderer. The person's a murderer and murders someone. Well, I said, well, that's possible. But what if I live in Oklahoma, the 2 biggest cities in Oklahoma, Tulsa and Oklahoma City, right? What if there's a murderer in Tulsa and they drive to Oklahoma City? Shouldn't Oklahoma City build a wall to make sure no one from Tulsa goes to Oklahoma City unless they go through this checkpoint and they do a background check on the person? You see, now I know what you're thinking. You're saying, well, we're still Americans. Does it make any difference if someone shoots you or kills you or harms your family, whether they're American, whether they're French, whether they're Brazilian? What difference does it make? They're still murderers, right? And what about people who live in Oklahoma City who may be prone to stealing or taking property that's not theirs, even to the point if they have to take it by force and kill someone for it. What about the people within that city? You know, do you not allow them to walk across the street because this guy may be a murderer? So before he crosses the street, you want to check his papers. And I know I'm getting ridiculous, but look at the logic behind it. It doesn't make any sense. Immigration should be open to everyone in every country. The only thing you need to do is make certain that when you're in that country, you understand what the rules and regulations are for that country. All right? Look at Canada. I was in Montreal about 15 years ago, right? And everyone spoke two languages, not everyone, about everyone spoke two languages, French and English. And every time someone answered the phone, they answered in French, they introduced themselves in French, and then they introduced themselves in English. If you got an answering machine, received an answering machine message, you got it in French and you got it in English because it's a French colony, but yet it's part of Canada, which is an English-speaking country, the western part, other than the area of Montreal. So, so there are different, even here's a case where we have different languages altogether, but yet it's one country. Now, I know there's secession units and movements and whatever, and that's a separate issue. My only point is that we talk about the end result, and then we try to fix the end result with illogical conclusions that don't solve the problem, that exasperate the problems. In the 1930s, we had open borders with Mexico. People would come from Mexico to the United States, work on the farms, and then go back. We had no trouble. You see, what a border does, what a wall does, I mean, good old our friend Donald Trump, that guy needs help. Guy needs help badly, Anyway, by the way, go online and look at the wall separating the United States from Mexico. And there are hundreds of pictures. They are laughable. There are ramps going over it. There are kids young people, who slide in between the slats. There are parts where it's all knocked down. There are parts where it's just a road that goes right through the wall. The only thing it keeps out some of the wildlife that usually migrates and they die, But at one time, they went back and forth. Now, what a wall does, and I'm not the author of this, and believe me, this is not original. This has been said a million times, and you've heard this a million times, is that a wall does not keep people out. A wall keeps people in. Now, why is that so? Why does it keep people in and not keep people out? Well, because getting in is kind of easy, because there's no one on that side stopping you from jumping the wall. But there are guards on the other side that are preventing you from getting out because they can see you. They're on the American side. They're on the U.S. side, right? So you have a higher chance of getting caught. And once you're caught, you go to a detention camp, and then you get shifted over. You may wind up in jail. Then you get shipped back to Mexico, to a place that you don't live. It's a horrible experience. So it's easy to get in, very difficult to get out. So if Donald Trump wants to build a wall, he will keep the, quote, illegals. And I don't think anyone is illegal for coming here. No one is illegal for migrating. If that's the case, then if I can't tell my wife, we can never go to Kansas City because we're not citizens of Kansas City. We're citizens of Tulsa. That's where my address is.
But Joe, we're Americans. We're in America.
Could I hear you? I don't know. I don't know if I can hear you.
It's up, but anyway. But we're citizens. We're America.
Oh, that's right. Thank you.
They won't appreciate the importance of America unless we make them spend money on cards that tell them how great America is.
Yeah, they need a card.
America.
Yeah.
And stuff.
Why didn't I know that? That's one of my board operators. He had to put us 2 cents in. He's fired, by the way. Yeah, but other than that, no, only kidding. But you see, my point is that I don't even understand the concept of illegal immigration. I don't know how migrating can be illegal. Now, if in fact it was, and someone could explain it to me and tell me why it's illegal, that means we all have to get out of town. We have to get out of Dodge. You know why? Because when the Western, the Western countries of Europe came here to settle, they didn't have green papers. The Indians didn't invite them in. They came over here. They killed the warriors. They subjugated the children to poverty and to slavery, and they even raped some of the women. So they came here, and then they took their land. Now, if this is the way we settled a good portion, not all of it, but a good portion, and oh, by the way, and we tricked the heck out of them as well, you know, and we broke every single treaty we made with them, right? So we came here and we took the land away from the Indians. Well, if we want to keep the Mexicans out or the Canadians out or everyone else in the world out because they're all illegal, what does that make us? Well, it makes us illegal. But we won't talk about that. Oh, Donald Trump talks about we're going to correct the situation and we're going to have a program and we're going to build a wall and Mexico's going to pay for it. And of course, Hillary Clinton, I love that Hillary rotten Clinton. You know, she's going to have another program and document everyone and make them legal and all that. She doesn't have to do anything. Just get the government out of everything and things will work out fine. Now, I have had people work on my house who I know are from Mexico because they can hardly speak English, you know, and they say that they're citizens of the United States, and I don't ask them for a card, and they're wonderful people, very trustworthy, and they do fabulous work. Now, at my age, I have arthritis. I can't do the same things around my house that I used to, and I hire hands. Sometimes they're from Mexico, and sometimes from the United States. It just depends on who's available, what type of work they do, and that's all I care about. I don't care whether or not they came here legally or illegally. Don't care. Makes no difference to me whatsoever, provided they are honest, hardworking, you know, and they do what they say they're going to do, and they do good work. Period. Right? Now, as far as them coming over and taking jobs from Americans, you mean a person who doesn't speak English with little or no education is a competitor to you for a job? I mean, if this is your competition, you have to look at yourself and say, well, man, if someone can come over here, not speak the language, not be able to read or write English, you know, and I am competing against them for a particular job, I, as an American, have to rethink the job. I am looking for the wrong job. Being educated in this wonderful country of ours where we have the phenomenal school system where everyone graduates high school as a relatively intelligent, critically thinking person, I should have no trouble getting a pretty high-level job. My competitor would never be a person who doesn't speak the English. The English. They don't even speak the English. I sound like them now. You see what I mean? But we're not talking about the cause, but the basic cause of our problems. We talk about the fixes that sound good. And Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump are all wrong. Not wrong in one or two cases, they are all wrong. Because you see, the government doesn't solve our problems. You know what solves our problems? Ourselves giving us the freedom to solve our own problems. And the free market system will do that automatically. Now, Donald Trump says he's going to repeal but replace Obamacare. That scares the hell out of me, because when they say replace, you never know what they're going to get. Now, why doesn't he say, I'm going to repeal Obamacare and return the medical industry to the medicine to the medical industry? In other words, the free market. You go see a doctor, you don't fill out 1,000 forms and wait online for 20 hours to see somebody, even if you're having a heart attack, and pay 10 to 20 times as much as you normally would pay. Why can't you just go to your doctor and say, I'm not feeling well, and you and the doctor work out terms? My wife's an audiologist, and if someone came to her and said, I need some help. I don't have any money, but I'll give you a dozen eggs every week. She would take it. She would. She's a wonderful person. She wants to help people. I mean, she's not starving to death. She'd be more than happy to help anyone she can help. And I know so many doctors who would do the same, but they can't because their doctor's offices have been turned into these big bureaucracies of paperwork and paper pushing and rules and regulations and HIPAA and all this other crap. That actually medicine is a very small portion of it, and the doctors are no longer in charge. Shouldn't we be talking about that? Why doesn't Donald Trump talk about what he's going to replace Obamacare with? Because what he's going to replace it with is going to be just as bad, if not worse, than Obamacare. And Obamacare is an absolute catastrophe. And Hillary Clinton, she's going to make certain, I love this one, make certain that women are given leave, when they have children, that they're given adequate leave time from work, to raise their children without losing their job. Oh, that's great. That's wonderful. So now you have two people applying for a job. You have a male and a female. The male is not going to have children. They can't, believe it or not, they can't do that. But the female will, right? She may get pregnant and be out for 3 months or 6 months or whatever they decide they're going to have to pay the person by law if she gets pregnant while on the job. Who are you going to hire? Put yourself in the businessman's shoes. You say, well, I can't have a person leave for 6 months, pay him to stay home, and if I don't do that, the government closes my company down. So the woman is more qualified, but I'll take the male because at least I know I'm not going to get stuck with 6 months of leave. So what she's doing, in fact, is she's hurting the probability of a woman getting a job. I mean, I would do that, and I'm not prejudiced or anything like that, but I have an occupational health testing company. I cannot have one of my technicians leave for 6 months. I'm out of business. And it has nothing to do with me disliking women or not wanting to give them leave. I can't run a business that way. They say, well, then you have to raise your prices. Well, I raise my prices if my competitor is hiring only men and they can lower their prices, I'm out of business again. I mean, where's their brains? They have absolutely no brains whatsoever. Now, Gary Johnson, I wish was a little bit more forceful. I agree with most of what Gary Johnson says. The one I have to mention, I only have a couple more minutes, but he was asked whether or not, the businesses should have the right to discriminate. And he said, no, the government should have some sort of regulation against that. And I thought to myself, what a dumb answer. Now he says a lot of smart things, and I agree with 90% of what he says, but sometimes he comes out with really dumb things. Let's take the case of the person the baker who wouldn't bake a cake because the person was gay and didn't want to bake all that stupid stuff. And they say there should be a law against that. Well, there is a law. It's a natural law against that. Because when I go into business, why am I going into business? I'm going into business, I can say, to serve the people that I'm catering to, but to make money, to make a living. And if I don't serve someone, guess what? Someone else will. So the baker across the street bakes the cake for the gay couple. They make money, I lose money. And if I did that, I'm a stupid business person and I deserve to go out of business. And he said the government should intercede. No, the free market automatically intercedes. And even if you look at the logic behind it, what about the person who is, let's say, gay, right? And there was one bakery and where the owner was not gay. He doesn't discriminate. He baked cakes for anyone. But then there was another bakery where he knew that the owner was gay. And he says, I'm going to go to the gay bakery because the guy's like me and he's gay, I'm gay, I want to give him my business. Well, then shouldn't the government come in and say, you can't do that, you're discriminating. I know it's absolutely ridiculous what I just said, but that's the way we think. The government can't control the way we behave in every decision that we make. And that's exactly where we're going with Hitler. That's where we're going with Donald Trump, Trump. And I think the Trump has been stumped altogether. I think the guy's lost his mind altogether. And I wish they would give equal time to Gary Johnson. Jill Stein, she's a train wreck. She's been wrecked a long time ago. She's a not even worth talking about. And I'm only talking about the other two clowns because they're giving most of the notoriety in this election, and they shouldn't. Gary Johnson should be given equal time. He's in all 50 states, and he makes sense. Why do we have extreme Islamic military? No one asked the question, why do we have it? Oh, because they hate us. Why do they hate us? Why? I want to ask the question why. We never ask why. We just ask the surface question, give a surface answer, and then we vote on it. And then we want to know why things get worse. If you really want to get to know, listen to we're going to have Ron Paul on today. Ron Paul has a Ron Paul channel. Go to Ron Paul channel on I think it's ronpaul.com. It's on the Ron Paul channel. And they talk about all of these issues. In fact, if Ron Paul really wanted to do well for a station, he'd invite me on Ron Paul channel. He would. I mean, I'm great at this stuff because I understand the process. I'm old enough. I've been around the block 1,000 times, and I've been hit in the head so many times. You know, my brains are loose, but they still work a little bit. But I tell you, I'm not as quacky as these people running for. Can you imagine the people running for president are idiots? The mainstream, they're both idiots. They don't make any sense whatsoever, and they appeal to the lowest level of intelligence and to the emotions of the American people. And there is your recipe for disaster. And with that, I guess our half hour is up. I want to thank you very much for listening to me rant. And please send me your comments to comments@libertytalkradio.com, especially if you disagree. Okay? Folks, this is the end of today's broadcast. We'd like to thank our sponsors for the financial support, and we'd like to thank you for listening in. You can further the cause of liberty by recommending this program to your friends, and let us hear from you. Our email address is comments@libertytalkradio.com. Remember, as my wife would say, you're either allowing your liberties to be taken away or you're striving to protect them. Unfortunately, there is no middle ground. Until next time, this is Joe Cristiano. You've been listening to Liberty Talk Radio. Stay well, stay tuned.